lame thing about millennials is that we still have hope that the current systems can be changed through proper participation. A lot of Gen Z seems to be following the Gen X model of the system is broken, so I won't participate.
Burn down the whole country if you don't get your way.
Let's explore 20 generations' problems with Mills and Gen Zs. Number 20, adulting.
8, right?
Yes.
8, like in the morning 8?
Yes, in the morning.
This explains a lot of the differences we see between millennials and Gen Z. Gen Z grew up with the internet already built into their known world. Talking with relatable strangers online wasn't novel for them, it's just how the world is.
I've been with about a person each day for the last 6-7 months.
Millennials grew up in a time where there were still pretty solid milestones to meet, where one thought of someone as an adult, but they themselves didn't hit them as early. Social norms changed, and we were far more relaxed about certain topics than previous generations. Marriage, house ownership, kids, these things all happening after in life compared to previous decades. Things like finance and home ec weren't taught to us in school, and the internet was still very young. So when we hit our 20s, we didn't feel as grown up as previous generations. Adulting as a term is kind of stupid, but we can see why the term came about.
Oh, you think you're gonna do that by working? No, we riot at dawn.
Today, my dark babies, we're talking Disneyland, the happiest place on earth.
Number 19, obsession with Disney World. Most millennials we know are obsessed with Disney World, and we don't get it. It's an overpriced amusement park. Disney is fun once or twice in your 20s to 30s for a nostalgia trip. Same with Harry Potter World, a chance to spend your own money on stuff your parents wouldn't have when you were a kid. But going every year is weird. But we can shed some light on the reason why some millennials go every year. It's like anyone else's fandom, so like One Piece or Star Wars. However, what fueled the craze with millennials in the first place was that Disney films were the only major animated movies growing up for most of us. We watched all the Disney films growing up, sometimes on repeat on VHS. So Disney parks were an extension, and ability to visit those worlds that we'd watch on TV was a surreal experience.
Mom, I had a dream that I was replaced by a diverse woman.
Oh, not again.
Don't have a goddamn cow. I'm only trying to riz your wallet. Now hand over your skibbity toilets so that I can go to Ohio's Got Talent so we can all be sussy amogus.
What? Millennials often express frustration that Gen Z has introduced a whole new set of words, slang, and expressions, for instance, fam, stan, riz, and so on.
However, there is a gender identity that is linked to the season. This is called gender season.
Yeah! Your bestie took a major L while driving her Hellcat.
Teenagers always sound very slangy to adults, just like millennials came up with plenty of new words and incomprehensible in-jokes. But Gen Z has been supercharged by streamers, YouTubers, and influencers, and the near-constant connection to social media, all of which millennials didn't have back in the day. Due to this regurgitating content machine that is social media, new words get spread much faster and then discarded and replaced, so it seems like more and more new things keep coming up. Millennials argue that Gen Z slang has just shortened millennial slang, an early 2000-hood slang that finally made it mainstream after Gen Z heard their big brothers and sisters.
I'm sorry, but at this particular time, that's looking like cap.
You're wrong!
Number 17.
There's a crazy, ignorant person
on my comment section.
You think gender equality is a joke?
Yeah!
If he buys our free speech platform, people will be able to have free speech.
Gen Z over-policing others' opinions. One major criticism millennials often have is that Gen Z tends to nanify everything. They have become like the stereotypical 80s, 90s Protestant mom groups who want to cancel anything that offends their sensibilities.
This is what
the patriarchy looks like. Men, women.
How long have you been in college?
Half a semester.
You can't joke about X, that's crossing a line. You can't wear X, that's cultural appropriation. You can't hold X beliefs, you're problematic. You can't buy X, otherwise you're supporting X evil cause. Millennials theorize that a lot of Gen Zers struggle with feeling like they have little to no control over their own lives and the social relationships they have with others, especially those who are online. Thus, this insecurity manifests itself as a desire to police society and all those within it at large. Of course, This adds much unnecessary stress, which can either create or exacerbate mental health issues. Every generation has its issues and flaws, and these flaws shouldn't overshadow individuals who prove themselves to be genuinely good people.
And it's illegal for you to fight back.
Yeah! This is insane.
Prepare to die a noble social justice warrior. Death!
Number 16. Gen Zers' lack of respect for elders. Millennials complain that Gen Z has become rude and has lost respect for the elders. They think that a shift has been made from automatically respecting their elders to demanding elders to earn their respect.
This is the thing that the younger generation lacks.
Manners. I find a definite lack of respect for their elders, which, excuse me, but I was young once, and I was never accused of not having respect. I did respect my elders. I was taught.
If you don't do something for them and give them a reason, they simply don't respect you. Younger generations don't care who you are. They do what they want, and they will let you know.
So the boomers across the board have been institution destroyers.
We, as Gen Zers, were to get that same energy from boomers, we would feel ostracized.
And we would feel marginalized.
Gen Z, on the other hand, argues that every generation feels that following generations are disrespectful. In the 4th century BC, Plato said, "What is happening to our young people? They disrespect their elders, they disobey their parents, they ignore the law. They riot in the streets, inflamed with wild notions."
All we are is dust in the wind, dude.
Gen Z argues that respect is learned. If it isn't taught, it doesn't happen. Younger people are watching their parents be disrespectful and think it's okay. Also, parents don't respect teachers, and then the students think they don't need to either.
And also, like, low-key, that sounds illegal.
Number 15. Older generations blaming Gen Z.
Gen Z doesn't know how to write a check. They don't know how to address an envelope. They don't know how to read cursive. All I'm saying is if Gen Z takes over the world, it's gonna be pretty easy to get it back. We're just gonna write our battle plans in cursive on a piece of paper.
Older generations blame Gen Z for the contemporary problem. However, according to Gen Z, it's standard ageism. This is how it works. Gen Z argues that Gen Xers in the 80s and 90s were blamed for everything: sky-high divorce rates, declining church attendance, conspiracies, etc. Then the millennials came of age and everything was officially their fault. All the fears about the changing society were put on them. Now the oldest millennials are around 40 and half the millennials are over 30 years old. Society is continuing to rapidly change, and the fear of that change is ingrained in the older generations. Those older generations then blame Gen Z. This is how the cycle works. The kids being born right now will be blamed in 20 years.
Breaking news! Old people think young people are lazy. Story at 11.
Number 14. Gen Z is self-absorbed.
Crusty eye patch. Unstandable personality. No attention span.
Clean girl aesthetic, sad girl aesthetic, downtown girl aesthetic, rich girl aesthetic.
Millennials frequently criticize Generation Z for being excessively self-obsessed. They portray them as overly focused on themselves, prioritizing social media presence and personal validation over other concerns. They complain about their 24/7 habit of filming themselves and posting it online. They argue that Gen Zers are preoccupied with their thoughts and feelings and are not very attentive to the needs and perspectives of others. The notion that Generation Z is self-obsessed is often rooted in their engagement with social media, where self-promotion and personal branding are prevalent. Platforms like Instagram, TikTok, and Snapchat encourage users to share frequent updates about their lives, creating an environment that emphasizes individuality and personal expression. This constant sharing is perceived as narcissistic by the millennials.
A little quirk, if you will. I have hair
in my armpit.
Number 13. Gen Z arriving late.
Gen Zs have the reputation for being amongst the very worst workers.
But I'm sorry, if you only want to work 4 hours, it's going to be harder for you to get a house.
One common complaint that millennials often have about Gen Z is the latter's seemingly casual attitude towards punctuality. While being a few minutes late occasionally is understandable, life happens after all. Consistently showing up 10 to 15 minutes late can be perceived as unprofessional and disrespectful. Millennials who have long been conditioned to value timeliness as a mark of professionalism find this habit particularly frustrating.
So you're telling me that I have to wake up at the butt crack of dawn every single day, go and work somewhere?
So if it's okay, I work best in the morning at 10:45.
When you're constantly arriving 15 to 20 minutes late to work or meetings, it sends a message that you don't respect others' time, which can quickly erode your reputation and relationships at work. The issue becomes even more pronounced when punctuality affects others directly. For instance, if you're relieving someone at the end of their shift or are expected at a meeting, showing up late can be seen as a lack of consideration and selfishness. Millennials believe that professionalism still matters, and part of that is being where you should be when you should be there. It's not just about getting your tasks done. It's about being available to answer questions and help with unpredictable situations that might arise. Furthermore, predictability is a crucial aspect of a professional environment. Even if you can complete your work on time, not adhering to a consistent schedule can disrupt the workflow and create unnecessary stress for your colleagues. Millennials argue that sticking to your schedule and being reliable are key components of professional behavior. Not showing up on time doesn't just display poor time management. It signals a lack of respect and consideration for others, undermining team cohesion and trust.
We can demand more than just free pop chips and kombucha on tap. Maybe we can make a real change. Okay.
Number 12. Rude and indifferent Gen Z.
Shut the fuck up. Nobody cares about the road, right? Except for the road. Fuck you.
Have you had to get rid of Gen Z employees?
Absolutely.
Many millennials find themselves increasingly frustrated with Gen Z's attitude and behavior, particularly in everyday interactions at places like stores and restaurants. To many millennials, these 20-somethings come off as rude, indifferent, and bloated with a sense of entitlement. It's mind-boggling how self-absorbed and vain some of these young individuals can appear. Raised to be polite, kind, and give others the benefit of the doubt, millennials often make an extra effort to smile, use a friendly tone, and avoid being judgmental. Yet these interactions often leave them shaking their heads in disbelief. Times are tough, both economically and socially, and millennials get that.
But that's our generation's fault because our generation started political correctness.
But they believe it doesn't hurt to put a little heart into the job you're fortunate to have. Being attentive, present, and generally nice to people could make everyone's day a little better, including their own. However, many Gen Zers seem to be prudes, indifferent to common courtesy. Millennials who work in public places like hospitals interact with people of all ages. Younger folks, though, tend to be more rude and standoffish to them. Older generations have no problem striking up random conversations, but Gen Z often responds with blank stares and silence, even when offered simple help. This typical interaction suggests they either don't know how to interact properly or simply don't care.
It's just going in one ear and right out the other.
You quit? You're not going to be disrespected by anybody. I don't know who you people think you are, but you don't treat anybody like this.
And people are laughing. Yeah, I'm gonna go. I don't even care if I don't get paid today.
A lot of Gen Z people just embrace irreverent attitudes towards anything that doesn't involve sass and memes. Despite remaining nice and cordial, the experience is often draining for millennials. Number 11, millennials being unfamiliar with social media.
Is overrated. So first they come for my side parts, now they're coming for Queen Bee. Cool.
Gen Z often finds themselves baffled by a certain genre of millennials on social media who seem out of touch or dismissive of the digital landscape. These millennials often act as if Gen Z's digital native lifestyle is foreign to them. A prime example is the trend of things we grew up with that will send Gen Z into a coma. TikToks where millennials list items like CDs, implying a huge generational gap. This can feel infantilizing to Gen Z, as if their slightly different childhood experiences are worlds apart. Most millennials were born in the 80s, and while their early years differed, the technological advancements of the 90s and 2000s were a shared experience. This disconnect can be frustrating. For Gen Z, social media is an integral part of daily life, shaping everything from social interactions to news consumption. When millennials either dismiss its importance or struggle to use it effectively, it creates a barrier. Some millennials, in pursuit of peace of mind, choose not to keep up with the latest social media trends, preferring to remain detached from what younger people are posting or doing online. Gen Z views this detachment as a problem. Social media, despite its flaws, is a tool for connection and communication. It offers a window into people's lives and experiences, albeit a curated one. While it's true that social media can be shallow and foster untrustworthy behavior, it also is a platform for genuine engagement and information sharing. When millennials opt out, they miss opportunities to understand and connect with younger generations.
This girl's asking for a whole ass snack?
Number 10, millennials not doing anything about problems. Gen Z is frustrated with the inaction of millennials when it comes to addressing problems. It seems like millennials would rather complain and share memes about their struggles than actually doing something to change the circumstances.
Millennials, right? That's our solution. We buy tickets to Disney.
While they've made some progress in areas like LGBTQ+ rights, they fall short in other areas like work ethic and economic sense. Millennials appear content with just scraping by, rather than striving for more. They've settled for mediocre jobs and a lackluster quality of life, which is baffling to Gen Z. This lack of motivation and sense of responsibility is evident in workplaces, where millennials seem to lack ambition and drive. They want everything handed to them on a silver platter without putting in the effort to achieve it. Moreover, Gen Z observes a shift towards apathy and resignation among millennials. While their discontent is expressed through memes and jokes, there's a sense that millennials have become complacent in advocating for real societal and political changes. This shift in activism from outspoken to subdued is disappointing to Gen Z, who feel that they are inheriting a world where the voices of older generations dominate while issues remain unresolved. Gen Z desires to see more proactive engagement and leadership from millennials in addressing economic challenges, workplace dynamics, and societal issues. They hope for a shift towards more assertive action rather than acceptance of a status quo that may not serve their futures well.
I come from the veil lifted.
Number 9. Gen Z being over-reliant on technology.
Salesforce did a study that found that only 32% of the Gen Z workforce feels like they know how to use their technology within their jobs.
I'm gonna go for a walk and I'm not bringing my phone. Oh my god.
Millennials often find themselves puzzled by Gen Z's reliance on technology, which they perceive as more dependency than true tech savvy. As someone who has taught Gen Z in high school computer classes and now supports elderly communities with IT issues, the contrast is stark. Many middle-aged and elderly individuals assume their younger family members are tech wizards, but in reality, Gen Z's knowledge often barely scratches the surface beyond basic smartphone operations and social media navigation. Unlike millennials who grew up tinkering with less than user-friendly technology, Gen Z tends to be adept at using tech as consumers rather than understanding its inner workings. Tasks like changing a Wi-Fi password or navigating a computer's file system can be daunting for many in Gen Z, despite their constant use of devices. This technological reliance concerns millennials, who see a generation comfortable with touchscreens but unfamiliar with basic PC functions that were integral to their own upbringing. Millennials are often frustrated by Gen Z's limited tech abilities, which hinder their productivity and independence. They find themselves acting as unofficial IT support, guiding younger colleagues through basic computer tasks. The irony is that older generations who invented the technology and millennials who adapted to its evolution are more tech-savvy than the younger generation. The over-reliance on technology has created a knowledge gap, where Gen Z excels in social media but struggles with fundamental computer skills. This disparity has millennials concerned as they recognize the importance of understanding technology in an increasingly digital world. The reliance on technology without comprehension is a recipe for disaster.
Wait, what is a modem?
How do you get on the internet if there's no Wi-Fi?
Okay, so how do I get online?
You use an Ethernet cable.
Number 8. Different communication styles.
15 years ago, let's reminisce 2009. The iPhone 3, there was no IG, the Black Eyed Peas were in their prime.
Millennials communicate via text messages, while the Generation Z prefer to use images and text.
The hold social media has on Gen Z is terrifying. It is alarming how deeply this generation is consumed by their phones, always online, even during social interactions. Communicating with Gen Zers can be challenging, both in real life and online. Conversations often feel dry and effortless, with responses like, "It's not that deep," or "Why do you care so much?" becoming common. This attitude is frustrating and discouraging, creating a barrier to meaningful discussions. Millennials share these concerns, struggling to understand why Gen Z puts so little effort into discussions, even on topics they might be passionate about. Attempts to engage in deeper conversations often result in defensive reactions, victim playing, or even outright hostility. Millennials, who grew up in an era where face-to-face communication and in-depth discussions were more common, find this lack of engagement foreign and disheartening. In real life, the social skills of many Gen Z individuals seem stunted due to their heavy reliance on social media for interaction. Millennials, who have a more balanced mix of online and offline socialization, struggle to connect with younger colleagues and peers who are less comfortable with real-life conversations. The preference for brief, superficial interactions on social media leaves millennials feeling disconnected and frustrated. This generational divide poses a significant problem. Effective communication is crucial in both personal and professional settings, and the inability to engage meaningful can hinder collaboration and understanding. Millennials hope for a shift towards more genuine interactions, where discussions can go beyond surface-level exchanges and foster real connections. Number 7. Gen Z lacking social skills.
They're good socializing in social media. They are more shy in real life, but I don't think that counts as bad.
Many millennials are increasingly concerned about the noticeable lack of social skills in Gen Z. Some millennials have observed that while their slightly older peers are jaded, those younger than them are almost antisocial. They avoid eye contact, rarely introduce themselves, and are perpetually glued to their phones. This is particularly true for the younger end of Gen Z, whose social development was severely impacted by the pandemic. Isolated for years, their primary mode of interaction shifted to digital platforms, depriving them of crucial face-to-face socialization. This lack of traditional social experiences has left Gen Z struggling to develop interpersonal skills. Growing up in a world dominated by smartphones and social media, they never knew a time without these technologies. As a result, they're entering the real world significantly behind in social development, which has become evident in both personal and professional settings. Managers often report that Gen Z employees lack basic social skills and struggle to complete tasks that require interpersonal interactions. Millennials who have witnessed the shift in social dynamics are concerned about the long-term effects of this lack of social skills. The consequences are evident in Gen Z's struggle to form meaningful bonds, leading to a sense of isolation and disconnection. Effective communication is vital in both personal and professional spheres, and the inability to engage meaningfully can create barriers. The social void between millennials and Gen Z is a pressing issue, highlighting the need for a renewed focus on developing essential social skills. Number 6. Gen Z not seeing intricate nuances of an argument.
Felix Cypher, a trans man who has decided that they are the reincarnation of...
Millennials often find it challenging to engage with Gen Z due to their tendency to see the world in black and white terms. Many Gen Z individuals treat arguments as binary, seeing issues as either totally right or totally wrong, and anyone who disagrees as an enemy. This dichotomous reasoning is evident in their online behavior, where they often seek out echo chambers that reinforce their beliefs, using this as proof of their correctness. Intelligence lacking wisdom is a significant concern for millennials when it comes to Gen Z. This generation's black and white interpretation of history and current events can be traced back to their education.
Okay, you're not free to say whatever you want if you get fired for an off-color joke.
Which often lacks emphasis on critical thinking and problem-solving skills. Studies have highlighted that the younger generation's cognitive development has been adversely affected by social media, which simplifies complex issues into easily digestible, polarized views. The prevalence of echo chambers on Gen Z-focused platforms exacerbates this issue. Any dissenting opinion is often met with harassment, downvoting, or banning, further entrenching their views. This environment discourages open dialogue and the exploration of different perspectives. Millennials believe that understanding the intricate nuances of arguments is crucial for personal and societal growth. The world is rarely black and white. It is filled with gray areas that require critical thinking and empathy. The educational crisis and social media's influence have contributed to Gen Z's critical thinking deficit, leaving millennials worried about the future of constructive dialogue and informed decision-making. Number 5. Gen Z playing victims.
Voting for your favorite artist, vote to change some of these laws that are oppressing us.
Millennials often find themselves frustrated with the way Gen Z tends to play the victim. This behavior manifests in various ways, from seeking attention through social media to blaming external factors for personal issues. For instance, quite a few Gen Zers would find insufferable friends who constantly compete in the pity Olympics, always seeking sympathy and attention rather than addressing their problems head-on. Gen Z's need for attention can sometimes overshadow genuine interactions. They often crave to be talked about or involved in everything, leading to a culture where insecurity drives their actions. Instead of focusing on their personal growth through activities like sports, music lessons, or school clubs, they tend to dwell on their perceived problems. Millennials remember kids acting similarly in high school and college, often out of a desperate need for validation. This behavior was usually rooted in insecurity, with individuals feeling when they had to be perceived as interesting or troubled to gain attention. Unfortunately, this attitude has persisted and even intensified in Gen Z. They refuse to take ownership of their problems, instead blaming parents, the school system, or lack of motivation. This mindset is not only debilitating but also contagious, spreading a culture of helplessness and entitlement. This trend is concerning as it hinders personal growth and fosters a sense of powerlessness. Number 4, millennials gatekeeping.
We had Drake and Josh. You have what? TikTok? You're 30 years old.
Fuck you! I'm 29.
Anyone tired of millennials gatekeeping everything? It seems like millennials have a knack for over-identifying with the things they like, shows, music, you name it, and building their entire personality around them. But why do they feel the need to guard these interests so fiercely? Maybe it's because the breakdown of monoculture has entrenched them in their fandom bubbles, making them more protective. Older generations probably had their gatekeepers too, but without social media, their battles were less visible. In past centuries, people shunned those who failed to conform to local customs, but now the battleground is online. Millennials gather in digital spaces more than in person, and this shift has transformed gatekeeping into a virtual affair. They're particularly protective of their pop culture, often reacting with shock or derision when someone outside their age group enjoys something they cherished when it was new. They assume others are either too old or too young to truly appreciate it. This gatekeeping mentality often manifests in competition for limited resources. Millennials didn't start gatekeeping until they had to compete against many other people for the things they love or for exclusive perks they knew about before others. For example, when something goes viral on TikTok, it's sold out for months. Naturally, millennials don't want to share anything neat they discover, fearing it will be snatched away by the masses. For Gen Z, this gatekeeping is frustrating. They feel excluded from enjoying or appreciating things just because they weren't part of the original wave. Gen Z sees this exclusivity as a major turnoff, feeling excluded and belittled by millennials' condescending attitude. They long for a more inclusive and sharing culture, where passions can be celebrated without borders or age limits. Number 3, Gen Z being offended by everything.
How you guys doing? Guys? There are women in the audience as well, right? Thank you.
So, all we ask is you don't talk about race, religion, politics, gender, sexuality, and don't make direct eye contact with them.
How did Gen Z become so sensitive? Back in the day, you could joke about anything and people would laugh it off. If someone got offended, they'd just ignore it. Now a slightly off-color joke sends everyone into a frenzy.
The snowflake generation are using social media en masse to publicly ridicule and beat down any comedian who uses anti-PC language.
What happened? It seems like everyone gets offended by things they don't like. Millennials are baffled by this change, often feeling like Gen Z has become hypersensitive. It's especially amusing when the ones most offended are kids born around 2006 or 2007. Social media, particularly Twitter, amplifies this sensitivity. People are more vocal because they have platforms to share their feelings instantly and widely. It's not necessarily that people weren't sensitive before, but now it's more visible. Social media has made it easier for people to find others who share their feelings and sensitivities, creating echo chambers where these emotions are validated and amplified. Perhaps people were always this sensitive but were too afraid to express it. In the past, societal norms pressured individuals to hide their feelings to avoid judgment. Now, with greater acceptance and encouragement to share one's truth, more people feel safe to express their sensitivities. This leads to a more vocal and visible display of offense. Millennials struggle with this shift. They grew up in a time when brushing off offensive comments was the norm. The idea of everyone being offended by everything feels foreign and stifling. They see it as a problem because it changes the way humor, discourse, and interactions happen. What was once seen as harmless banter is now a potential landmine. This generational divide creates tension. Millennials feel like they have to walk on eggshells to avoid offending Gen Z, which stifles open and honest communication. Number 2, millennials' obsession with nostalgia. Millennials' obsession with nostalgia is perplexing for Gen Z. It seems like everything millennials do is tied to a longing for the past. They constantly reminisce about 90s cartoons, early 2000s music, and vintage video games. For Gen Z, this fixation on the past feels stifling and out of touch. They want to move forward, embracing new trends and technologies, but millennials often drag them back with their relentless nostalgia. Take the example of music. Millennials often rave about how bands like Nirvana and Blink-182 were the peak of musical genius. They look down on Gen Z's taste for modern artists like Billie Eilish or Taylor Swift, dismissing it as inferior. This creates a cultural rift where Gen Z feels their preferences are invalidated. They are tired of hearing how the music was better back then, and wish millennials would be more open to the evolving landscape of the music industry. Another example is fashion. Millennials often bring back trends from their youth like crop tops, high-waisted jeans, and scrunchies. While Gen Z appreciates some retro styles, They want to set their own trends without constantly being compared to what was popular decades ago. They feel like they can't fully express their unique fashion sense because millennials dominate the conversation with their nostalgic references. In the workplace, this obsession can be even more frustrating. Millennials frequently mention how things were done in the early 2000s, resisting new methodologies and technologies that Gen Z finds more efficient. For instance, a millennial might insist on using outdated project management tools because that's how we did it back then, ignoring more modern solutions that could streamline tasks and increase productivity. The constant comparison to the good old days undermines Gen Z's efforts to innovate and create a culture that reflects their own experiences and values. Number 1. Gen Z's sense of entitlement.
So you're telling me that I have to wake up at the butt crack of dawn every single day, go and work somewhere?
Millennials are frustrated with Gen Z's sense of entitlement, particularly in the workplace. Gen Z often expects promotions, raises, and flexible work arrangements without putting in the necessary effort or time. This attitude is not only alienating but also harmful, as it creates unrealistic expectations and a lack of accountability. For example, a Gen Z employee might demand a raise after just a few months on the job.
You are sus.
Without having achieved any significant milestones or taken on any additional responsibilities. Or they might expect to work remotely full-time without considering the impact on team collaboration and productivity. Millennials see this entitlement as a product of Gen Z's overindulged upbringing and a lack of understanding of the value of hard work. A similar and prevalent issue is the lack of patience and persistence. Millennials who have often had to work their way up through challenging economic times see the value in long-term dedication and gradual career progression. Gen Z, having grown up with instant access to information and immediate gratification through technology, often struggle with the slow pace of traditional career development. Gen Z's entitlement can lead to a lack of accountability and a blame-shifting mentality. When things don't go their way, they blame their employer, colleagues, or circumstances, rather than taking responsibility for their own actions. This attitude is not only frustrating for millennials but also harmful to Gen Z's own personal and professional growth. Millennials see Gen Z's entitlement as a major problem, as it creates a culture of expectation without effort and undermines the value of hard work and dedication. These are the 20 generations' problems with millennials and Gen Zs. Comment below if you think we missed something you encountered. Don't forget to like, share, and subscribe to our channel.
You're fired.
Oh!